accept us,
Okay,
and it's very difficult.
It's very difficult
To find a place to do the gene therapies outside of the FDA so that they don't cost so much money to come up with a cure, right? So we're always trying to cut costs and bring in therapies that have such good scientific research that we don't want to spend a couple years trying to make excuses for why we would want to use them, and try to get NIH funding or VC funding and come up with a cure that just costs too much.
This is awesome. I'm really, you'll have some interesting things to say about your work. I want to start off though, just introducing yourself and who you are and what you do.
Okay, so my name is Liz Parrish. I'm the CEO of a company called BioViva, and we specialize in gene therapy.
All right, and tell us a little bit about gene therapy and how that works. How actually somebody will take something and it will be in all their cells, and how that works.
Yeah, so gene therapy is pretty much the most eloquent medicine on the planet. So what we do is we transduce cells with genes, and those genes make the proteins that make you. And so if we feel like there's a gene lacking, we put it in. If you have a monogenic disease, that means you have a disease where one gene is malfunctioning. We put in a correct copy. It starts making the proteins that you need, and it's pretty much the game changer. It cures people. So it's super powerful, and it's super simplistic.
And how's the delivery work? Like, how do you actually get it from outside the body into all the cells?
Okay, so there's a few ways to do gene therapy, and the most common is plasmids. So you would actually put pretty much raw DNA into your body and try to get into the cells. Some people do that by just injecting it. Other people do what's called electroporation. So you add an electrical shock, and it helps it get into the cells in that area of your body. The second way is using a viral vector, and there's several viral vectors that you can use. We use AAV because it's very safe and you don't have an immune response to it. So what we would do is we would build up a batch of AAV virus, and it sounds very scary, but in fact it's not. The virus cannot get you sick. It cannot replicate. The area that would actually allow it to do that is cut out, and we put the gene in it that we want to deliver to the cells. Then the AAV goes in. It thinks that it's delivering its payload. It thinks that it's delivering its genome in order to make more AAV, when in fact it's just delivering the gene that we want it to deliver. That goes into the cell, and again it starts coding for the protein that makes you different.
And so you described like injecting it into an area, adding electrostimulation, and it will do that to the cells in that area that's electrostimulated?
Yeah, exactly. So if you did a plasmid delivery and you did electroporation, you would mostly get transduction into the cells with the electroporation. We don't do that. Our company uses a viral vector. We inject that into your body, and then we can inject it into specific areas, or we can inject it so that it transfuses through your system. One of the things about gene therapy that a lot of people don't understand is that you don't have to target every cell in the body for every gene therapy. So some gene therapies we might only want to target 10,000, 50,000 cells. Other gene therapies we might want to target every one in the human body. Like if we were trying to lengthen your telomeres, telomerase is a protein that's not shared outside of cells, so we would want to transduce as many cells as we possibly could. If we're doing something where we want to make you stronger, physically stronger, we don't have to give you as much of the therapy, because the protein that your genes will now create is shared outside into the bloodstream, and that's where it does its work. Do you want me looking that way?
You can look at, it'd be best if you look at me, but if you like looking at the camera, that's
so
fine.
sorry.
That's okay.
No, so should we start over?
No. I'm sure everything you said is going to be usable.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
So, delivering gene therapy through viruses, that sounds courageous, you know?
Yeah, well, when people think of viruses, they get a little bit nervous, but these viruses cannot replicate, okay? And the virus that we use actually doesn't affect humans, it affects moths. So we're learning to look at viruses that are not so scary. So in the past they did use the HIV virus, because the HIV virus is very tenacious. but it caused problems like insertional mutagenesis. Insertional mutagenesis, I want to say that correctly. And what then can happen is you could get something like cancer. We use a virus that doesn't insert and integrate into the chromosome, and when it does, if we put a rep cap on it to get it to do that, it goes into a safe zone, so it doesn't cause the problems that other viruses do. But as far as getting sick from these viruses, they cannot replicate, so they can't go on to get you sick or your neighbors. Gene therapy is not contagious.
When I said courageous, I meant professionally, not physically.
Oh, okay.
Or like dealing with the FDA, or like just, or even just what you had to do there. Like explain to me, like is it sort of a radical approach, or is it, do you feel like, or is it is it something you feel like will be adopted easily?
I think that once the world understands what gene therapy is, it will be adopted very easily. A lot of people are excited about it once they understand the simplicity of it. Once they understand that this is your cells doing what they do best. It's just them creating the proteins that you need. It kind of is a game changer. Whenever you pop a pill, it has the potential to disrupt your liver, to hurt your kidneys, and a myriad of other things. This is actually just using your cells as the drug factories that they can be, creating the proteins that you need to create in order to not get sick in the first place.
And well, what are like the regulatory hurdles for you to? I assume that this is a company, this is a commercial enterprise that you hope to market this product. Like, what's the sort of obstacles that you feel like you need to be overcome to do that?
Well, in the U.S. we have huge obstacles because in order to pass a drug you need about $2 billion now, and there's not a lot of investors who want to put their money into biotechnology. What happens is everything gets shut out. All small biotechs get shut out unless you can find VCs to raise that money, and if you can, then you come out with a cure that just costs too much. It's not affordable to the society, and so in health insurance providers won't cover it if it costs too much. So we have a little bit of a different scenario. We're going to go outside of the U.S. To actually collect the data on our gene therapies to prove safety and efficacy at a level that the FDA would expect to see, and then bring that data back here. So at this point, it's a game where pretty much only big pharmaceutical companies. I'm sorry. So at this point, it's so at this point, yeah.
That's okay. I want to step back a little bit because you said that you want to go outside the U.S. So
yeah.
Talk about going outside the U.S. What countries are more conducive for your work, and then talk about the process. And I also, if you can, also tell us why it costs $2 billion.
Okay, so the regulatory system in the U.S. costs a lot of money to get through, and it has to do with a whole bunch of benchmarks that you need to meet. And it's important that we prove safety and efficacy on this. One thing that you should know, first off, there are hundreds of people going through clinical trials for gene therapy right now in the United States. What they're not doing is they're not treating aging as a disease, so these therapies won't be available to everyone. Some of them you wouldn't need because they're for monogenic diseases that you don't have, but some of them have a crossover to treating aging as a disease that actually might benefit the whole population. Okay, so why we would go outside of the U.S. is to get the costs down. So it comes down to world economies in other countries, and it comes to not having to meet a high level of regulatory standard while still meeting it. Oh, sorry, we got to throw that out because that just doesn't make sense. Sorry, okay. That doesn't make sense. The cost system in the U.S. is based on the regulatory standards in the U.S. and it's cost on what I would consider a big game between the pharmaceutical companies and the U.S. government. They have basically locked it out, so it's almost impossible for small biotechs to get anything through here.
Is it too far to say it's collusion, or is it like a deliberate or just a side effect of the process?
I think that it's both. I mean, I think that the FDA is there to make sure that safety and efficacy happens. But I think what happens is when you have such a bloated industry and you have such big, huge pharmaceutical companies, they drive costs up radically. What they're able to achieve, like, so if a pharmaceutical company goes through the FDA, there's really no exchange of money. If it costs them $2 billion, it doesn't matter because they'll make $1 trillion off of the product. You know, often for just changing one small molecule.
And so talk about what other countries are more conducive for that kind of research.
So there are other countries that are more conducive and open to research at a lower cost, and it's because their economies don't cost so much. So number one, you know, you definitely want to do everything to a standard that we would expect for safety and efficacy, but you can get a workforce for less money. You also might have a government that's more flexible because they need the influx of money. They're interested in a new economy, right? South America has a lot of countries that are burgeoning in growth, that are looking for new economy money. Mexico, COPAFRIS, that's the Mexican FDA, may in fact be more open-minded to our therapies. There are small countries around the world island countries that are interested. Vanuatu actually might be a good place for us because I believe that they consider aging a disease. But you actually have to get a clientele there, so you actually have to be able to get your patients to these places in order to test your therapy, so you can't go too far.
And talk a little bit more generally about what you see, because it sounds like you're talking about something a little bit in the future. Can you talk a little bit about how you see medical tourism working now?
Oh, medical tourism is really actually burgeoning now. We've never seen such an outflux of patients who are determined to get well outside of the U.S. system. I mean, the U.S. system has essentially given us a whole bunch of drugs that are not, in fact, curing our diseases. And so that was one thing I talked about in my talk, that the U.S. is 5% of the world's population. We take 75% of the prescription medicine on the planet, and yet we have the shortest lifespan of all the industrialized countries. We're also the most obese and most depressed culture on the earth. So whatever is going on there with the drugs that we are using, they're not working, and as a matter of fact, we're dying on them. The very things that they are indicated to treat, we're dying on, and gene therapy actually changes that inherently. I mean, you know, I always say if you don't believe in gene therapy, you don't believe in evolution. You know, these are the myriad of genes that make us. We can make ourselves better through these genes.
And what do you think, if you're successful in your work, and life is aging is treated as a disease and is cured as a disease, and this in the beginning is 20, 30 years, maybe who knows how long, what do you think the impact on that is going to be on our society?
I think it's going to be a fantastic impact. As human disease has become less and less, as we've pushed disease off to these late-stage aging diseases, we've become a more humane society. The longer lifespans and better living create a more humane world. We feed more people in the world now than we ever have before. We treat our pets better than we ever have. We take care of the environment. We have so much more economy into our environment than we ever had before, that it really is a game changer in humanity and the way that people behave. I think that it will be really beneficial.
And what about the impact, all the normal criticisms about overpopulation?
Okay, so it doesn't matter where on the earth you are. It doesn't matter the religion. As lifespan goes up, fertility rates go down. It doesn't matter if these people are in the jungle or anywhere else. As lifespans go up, fertility rates go down. At the year 2020, at that point, there will be more people over the age of 65 than are under 5 years of age on the entire planet. It's called the silver tsunami, and it accounts for every country, even the countries that you think are still having massive amounts of children. It counts for every one of them. There'll be more people over 65 than are under 5 on the planet by 2020. And what that means is that healthcare costs are going to be astronomical. We have to do something about this situation because these under fives are what turn into our workforce. And our workforce, if you think of our workforce as holding up the healthcare costs of everyone up above them, that's like one person for every 150 people who are aging and who can no longer work and who are disabled. It actually doesn't work. So by 2040 in the US, if we don't solve the problem of aging, 35% of the GDP will be spent directly on healthcare. And those are numbers run by the United Nations.
And this is a sort of side question, only because you're an expert in this. You were talking about fertility rates. Do you think regenerative medicine is something that can not just extend life, but also extend fertility?
I think that it can, although the trends show that we will still have less children. Maybe we'll wait longer to have our first child. You know, maybe, obviously many people now are choosing not to have children at all. Do I like children? I love children. But I would love to see a world where every child that was born into it, we ensured that they didn't starve. We ensured that they got a good education. We ensured that they were handed around and loved. You know, I mean, actually, it's a beautiful future.
But you know, maybe in the future people can choose, you know, not to have children until they're 60.
Right.
Is that, you think that's possible?
I think that it's really possible. As a matter of fact, probably people might even hold off to 100 and think about how much more we would know then. You know, you wouldn't want some 40 or 50-year-old having children because, you know, they're so immature. Yeah, I think it would be.
And talk about other. So you're working in it's a very sort of narrow but transformative area.
Yeah.
There's all these other sort of narrow and transformative things being worked on, let's say artificial intelligence and, you know, nanotechnology. And can you talk a little bit maybe about how you see the work in these other fields intersecting what you do?
Oh, absolutely. I think that we run right alongside each other. So as computing gets faster, it actually helps us with our work. And as people get closer and closer to things like AI, our company's already looking at cognitive enhancement. You know, we want to make people stronger, smarter, faster, more visually accurate. I mean, we are that team. So whatever they do, we want to do it better. We're the Biologics Institute over here. We want to keep you in your body. You know, a lot of people will talk about, you know, and I think that it's really cool. They'll say, oh, I want a bionic arm that will, you know, lift 1,000 pounds. But actually that will crush your spine. Okay, you need a whole body. So either your whole body has to be electronic, or, you know, or mechanical, or else we have gene therapies that can help you lift a massive amount of weight right now.
Explain that. Like what kind of
so
gene
we have
therapy
a myostatin inhibiting gene therapy, and it increases your muscle mass. It increases it from like 3 to 20%. We're using it actually to treat atherosclerosis, which is a 1/3 killer of the population. But this gene therapy will pump you up, and you know, these type of technologies will make stronger, faster, healthier humans. It's survival.
Do you feel like there's a conflict on the horizon between biohackers or you know people who are more wanting to have artificial augmentation and more the regenerative school of medicine?
I don't think that there's any problem between one or the other. I think that we work in tangent. You know, I think that we spur each other on. We spur each other on to creativity. I love robotics. You know, but would I risk the infection of taking my arm off if I didn't have to have a robotic arm? Never. I'm an artist. I'm a textile person. I'm the person that will try to keep you in your biological body as powerful as we can make you for your lifespan, as long as it can be, until maybe there is no other option. But I mean, we always ask the question, if you're healthy, what do you die of? If we can make you healthy, there would be no reason to make that other change, unless that really is your dream. And we're not in any way in the way of getting in the way of people's dreams. We want them to achieve those things, but we don't want people to take risks that might actually shorten their life to make a technological advancement. They're welcome to do that. I love pioneers. We're pioneers. We do crazy things ourselves. But the hackers move this science forward. The robotics people, the AI people, they all move our science forward, and we love that.
It's like a sonar.
I know. Okay, and
You've got 5 minutes on battery.
on the battery. Okay.
Yeah. Really?
So I guess the can you even see like the end or the ultimate goal, or is there like besides the general goal of, let's say, extending life, is there what are some of the more concrete goals that you have as a company, like milestones or?
Well, I think our concrete goals are to cure aging as a disease, but I think that after that, we'll be happy to go into enhancement. We'll be happy to go into personal identification needs. So maybe some people want to change the color of their skin or their eyes or their hair. You have to remember, for people who are really kind of freaked out about that, we only deal with somatic cells. Whatever we do to your body, it doesn't go down to your germline. So you don't have kids with purple or green skin or fuchsia eyes. We would love to check that out. The genome is huge. We can do a myriad of things with it. We can do things for space travel. We can turn on the vitamin C gene. We can turn on, we can upregulate radiation resistance. I believe that telomerase will be a big gene therapy for that. We can make it, increase muscle mass like we have. That's great for space travel. Increase bone density. We'll be able to do a myriad of things to ensure that people can get from here to maybe several light years away from here. We don't really have any limits. There are immediate goals of curing disease, but there are no long-term goals. It is all to continue to do what we do and help people become the individuals that they want to be.
And would you say lengthening telomeres is the biggest challenge, like the biggest obstacle at the moment to?
It's not an obstacle at all. We already have a gene therapy that does it. So that gene therapy is known. It's the only one that's ever worked. We can lengthen telomeres. We're going to come up with human proof in the next 12 months as to whether that works in a whole human body or not.
And have you tried these therapies yourself, or?
I can't actually say that on camera right now.
Okay.
I can in a year or so. You can do another.
Wow.
Or if you want to follow us.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to follow us, we would love to have you there while we do therapies.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool. So like when you do something like that, why don't you change the battery?
I got that.